Hello, and thank you for joining today's event, introducing SICSS-Howard Mathematica faculty sponsor, Professor Amy Yeboah Quarkume. Now, I would like to introduce Nanette Coleman. Nanette H. Coleman is a PhD candidate in the Sociology Department at the University of California, Berkeley, and a UC National Lab Los Alamos Fellow. Her work sits at the intersection of the sociology of culture and organizations and focuses on cybersecurity, surveillance, and privacy in the US context. Specifically, Nanette's research examines how organizations assess risk, make decisions, and respond to data breaches and organizational compliance with state, federal, and international privacy laws. Nanette holds a Master of Public Administration with a specialization in democracy, politics, and institutions from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and both an MA in economics and a BA in communication from the University at Buffalo SUNY. A non-traditional student, Nanette's prior professional experience includes local, state, and federal service, as well as work for 2 international organizations and 2 universities. Nanette is also the lead organizer for SICSS-Howard Mathematica.
Thank you all for joining us for this discussion with Professor Amy Yeboah Quarkume. I'll begin by introducing Professor Quarkume. After that, she'll offer a general overview of her research trajectory to date, what she has done and is currently doing. From there, we'll spend some time learning about her recent grants and projects, relationship with SICSS-Howard Mathematica, and what is to come. Finally, we'll conclude by discussing her path to the professorate. If you've seen other discussions on this channel, including SICSS at Age 5, Past, Present, and Future, and Bit by Bit with Matt Salgonic, as well as our other professor introductions, you know that I'm particularly interested in elevating discussions on the topic of diversity in computational social science. Today's discussion will reflect that as well. Let's begin with Dr. A's bio. Dr. Amy Quarkume, affectionately known as Dr. A, is a daughter of Africa, scholar, filmmaker, data scientist, and associate professor of Africana Studies in the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. She holds a PhD in African American Studies, 2 Masters of Arts in Sociology and African American Studies, and a forthcoming Master's of Science degree in Data Science. Dr. Quarkume is an Andrew Mellon New Direction Fellow, Mellon Just Future's Initiative Invited Social Justice Consortium Partner, National Center for Atmospheric Research Innovator Fellow, and a White House Initiative HBCU All-Star Campus Mentor. Her work as a data science centers around AI bias, data inequality, and environmental justice. Currently, she employs an Africana Studies framework to examine the intersections of race and technology. Dr. A is presently co-facilitating the development of the Center for Applied Data Science and Analytics, advancing Howard University's first major effort in becoming a hub for data science social impact research and training for the next generation of data scientists. She has published widely, including in the Journal of Women, Gender, and Families of Color, Mosaic Magazine, Black Scholar, CLA Journal, and is currently working on her 2nd book project, Data Pollution and Savage Algorithms. You can also find her in popular press as a guest on BET News, PBS NewsHour, DirecTV, American Radio Works, Al Jazeera America's The Stream, Philadelphia Community Access Media, Roland Martin TV 1 News Show, and Mother Jones. Let's jump into a discussion about your research and research trajectory, Dr. A. This part of our discussion is meant to offer our listeners a sense of your prior scholarship. So let's jump right in. What have you studied in the past, and what projects are you currently excited about? What's in your pipeline now?
Thank you so much for being a part of this. So what I'm working on right now, well, before I do that, the past, my degree is in African American Studies, focused on particularly women and gender and education. And in the past, and still in the current, I still do work that looks at a Africana Studies framework. And what that means is looking at African people, place, and culture across time and space, and particularly looking at education. How can we regain and reshape our sense of what is education for African people first, as we kind of work through this system of what we're dealing with now. When it comes to women and gender, again, the same question: how do we as African people redefine or go back to how we looked at gender and gender roles for women and then kind of deal with what we're dealing with today when it comes to issues that Black women deal with in America. So coming from Temple, the African Studies program, I had a dynamic group of scholars where I was studying with, I graduated with. Dr. Joshua Myers at Howard today is someone who I still work with today. And my mentor, Dr. Greg Carr, also at Howard University, brought me to Howard. And what we're doing is kind of creating a space where we're allowed to untether ourselves from this European dynamic of definition. So in our department, we are very discipline heavy. We try to think on African terms about African people in African spaces based on African principles, right? So with that background, what I'm doing now is moving that to data science. So I also have a small background in sociology. Before I left sociology and went to African studies, I was big in statistics. Statistics was my thing. I love numbers. I love stats. So kind of revisiting that old passion, I am trying to kind of merge Africana studies and this kind of new blossoming field of what we know as data science and computational studies. And also position what we know is, let's say, numeracy. So the idea that African people have been dealing with numbers for centuries, right? Ideas of literacy and numeracy and numbers and letters, something that's in our DNA, right? So how do we revisit what we created and not allow it to disempower us as we stand today? We're looking at big data and disenfranchisement and AI bias and some of the ways in which within data science, we are a minority. So here at Howard, I'm rethinking how we present data science to a population of students who may feel as if numbers is not their thing. Like, I don't do numbers, or I don't do math. But reorient them to understand that numeracy is something that we created, something that we have power to embrace, something that everyone should be open to. And the science of looking at gathering information with numbers and visualizing that and seeing people and their power through that is something that we're trying to kind of create here at Howard. So it's just an exciting moment with data science at Howard, with Africana studies at Howard, and with just all the new projects and initiatives we have, just kind of computationally rethinking and revisioning how we position ourselves when it comes to the larger project of tech and race and gender and space and the continent and the diaspora and language. So it's exciting.
Fantastic. Can you talk about the current projects in your pipeline? So what are the papers, the things that you're working on? I think in your bio, I mentioned a book that you're working on right now.
Yes, so the current project is kind of a multi-layer project. So I'm on sabbatical, and I was given this time through the Andrew Mellon Foundation, the Mellon Foundation, they've changed their name, the Mellon Foundation, and I was able to learn a skill. So I'm taking time off to kind of go back to my first love and learn data science. So I'm studying, going back to being a scholar, getting homework assignments, learning Python, R. I mean, it's definitely a new language, and coming from the humanities, leaning into a new language, for particularly computer science, has been, a challenge. Sometimes I do well in my exams, sometimes I don't. So I'm taking time to do that. But as I'm going through these programs, I'm thinking about the type of environment we want to create for our students here at Howard. So we're also developing a program here at Howard. So I'm taking classes during this 1.5 year break and studying data science at different institutions across different platforms, in-person, digital, hybrid, and building a program here at Howard with a bunch of colleagues as well. 2, I'm also working on, again, the issues around environmental justice. So with NCAR, National Center of Atmospheric Science, again, Dr. Terry does great work with them, and she kind of pulled me into that space coming from the humanities and Africana studies. We're looking at some of the issues that exist within earth science and data science and AI. So that's kind of a lot. To give you a sense of what we're looking at is, particularly I leaned in more during COVID. So during COVID, when information was coming out that algorithms were not allowing, let's say, testing sites or vaccines to be more available to certain communities who are more at risk, I was kind of confused, like how does the algorithm leave us out? So that was one issue. And then two, I heard about other communities, for example, Native American communities that also weren't kind of counted in the science of dealing with COVID. And then lastly, I'm from New York, and recently we heard about the Bronx fires, right? The Bronx fires is somewhat an issue of space and, let's say, income, like not having. It's also an environmental issue. That's the fact that you have to warm your house, right, with a space heater speaks to some of the environmental injustices that exist within, let's say, urban environments. So I want to lean in and look at how some of the environmental issues that are connected to data science can be solved, not particularly going through algorithms, so to say, but really asking questions like, what is going on? Why aren't we being counted? Why are our issues not being counted in the sense of big data, and how we can improve it? So those are two projects. And with those two projects, I hope to work on this book on data pollution, and how we can clean up some of the issues within data science. So
I'm excited to learn more about how New York has informed who you are as a scholar. I'm also from New York, the state, not the city. I know my place. I'm from Long Island. I know my place.
I won't hate on you.
Where are you from in New York?
The Bronx, VX.
Boogie down.
Yeah,
all right, we'll talk about your path here soon. Can you, I'd love to hear more about your experience as a student right now. Some of my favorite faculty members continue taking classes, so I know many of our listeners will probably be very excited to hear about what it's like returning to that student posture, and the things that are surprising you about your data science studies right now. I want to be you when I grow up. I would love to go back and get a data science degree at some point. So can you tell us a little about that?
I mean, it's a whirlwind, I would say, and I'm unique in that I look at myself as a long, along with a long-lasting learner. Like I always want to learn something. I always want to grow. I think when I get to the position of being a full professor, I'll probably want to learn something new at that point, because the world is changing, right? And to keep up with the students that we want to put out in this new generation, we have to kind of always renew our minds and learn new skills, learn new tools. Like I really want to have a class in the metaverse. Like I need to learn how to do that, right? So I'm just kind of always looking for new things. And going back to the classroom was like, wow, like I'm reading someone else's syllabus, and I'm trying not to like say, this could be better, this could be, I'm trying to just like be a student. The bigger challenge is not telling people that I am a professor. Like I'm just someone in the class. Sometimes it happens when I email my professors and my signature kind of pops up, and I kind of forget to kind of take that down. But the classroom has changed, right? The classroom that I came up through as a graduate student has changed. Classrooms are more mixed and dynamic. You have a more of a younger and sometimes an older seasoned generation, all learning something new, which makes it more vibrant. So, I love that. And this online virtual reality also makes it very accessible. But it's difficult. I mean, midterms, finals, study groups. I had to go back to study groups. I had to Slack, group me. I'm like, I'm the teacher. I shouldn't be, but I have to be able to keep up and be able to form this sense of cohortship, right? But it is exciting. It's also very challenging, like Python, R, Tableau, SPSS, just kind of like, bringing those things back to my fingertips. It's not easy. I'm not gonna lie. I've withdrawn from some classes because it was the wrong time. My mind wasn't there, and I had to kind of check out and check back in again when I was ready. But I'm doing it. I'm being persistent. I'm trying to learn as much as I can with the time I have and create something great for our students here at Howard.
And you're also doing that in the middle of a pandemic. So kudos to you. And also such a gift to your students that you're all these different tools that we used to teach in the classroom, that you're getting to use them firsthand as a student, and just how much that will enrich your teaching and what you're able to give to students at Howard is incredible. So before we jump into your future work, I have to pause and congratulate you on associate professor. And
Oh.
I think we'd all love to know about what that path is like to becoming an associate professor. So obtaining tenure.
Oh, obtaining tenure. I mean, the rumors have it that it's hard, and it's true. It's hard. Like, believe the rumor. It's not a rumor. It's a fact. And every institution has their method to the madness, but it's something that I would say there was a program that I joined late in my process. It was a faculty development program that I was able to have a mentor and a coach who already received tenure that kind of changed my mindset about it, right? So it's easier to have someone on the other side kind of not holding your hand, but telling you to keep coming forward. That's very helpful. But it wasn't until I was in that program that I realized that the person that I had to define the person who I wanted to become after tenure, the person who I was during tenure. And that was something that I never thought of. I thought tenure as a race that you just run, cross the finish line, and you fall out, right? But I think for me, towards the end, I was like, I want to run, cross the finish line, look back and say I'm someone different at this new level of expectation that I'm called to be, not just for my students, but for other faculty as well. So that's something that kind of came out of the process. But, you know, writing, teaching, getting great evaluations, serving, being innovative, you know, taking risks and creating new courses, challenging yourselves to kind of put yourself out there when it comes to conferences and presentations. All that is very grueling. It's grueling, and depending on the field that you're in, Africana studies is somewhat of a, not a new discipline, but a younger discipline compared to the sociologies and the history. I had more space to take more risk, but I still have to write, I still have to read, I still have to teach, I still have to do research, I still have to gain grants, I still have to, you know, publish. So all those elements were there, and it was, you know, tough doing that, hitting a pandemic, going virtual, right? Documenting stuff, you know, processes change overnight when COVID hit. So submitting your paperwork kind of changed, right? And all through that, you know, you're dealing with a committee of people who are evaluating you, right? So you have to be consistent. You have to be, let's say, in other words, loyal to like the group and make them feel confident that you're part of the team and you're gonna, you know, lift up that department. But it was exciting, you know, again, run, you pass out, get up, then keep on going. But it was a beautiful process, I would say.
And I have to say it's a beautiful thing to watch your career, and I know many of us are excited to just keep watching and seeing what next. I count you amongst the scholars that I admire greatly. So especially, you know, knowing you're from New York, even though you're from the Bronx, it's fine. So you mentioned some grants. Can you tell us about the grants that you've received?
So the biggest I've received so far is the Mellon grant, again, taking this time off to learn data science. And that, again, it came across an email from the provost office. Anyone's interested, submit your proposals, and I was selected. I was shocked. The NCAR grant, again, with atmospheric science, is out of my my traditional field. Again, atmospheric science, I have no training in hard sciences or earth sciences, but they were open to hearing, let's say, my voice. So I've never been afraid to kind of apply for grants that may not align with my field, because it gives me a chance to bring my field to them. So I applied for this earth science grant with NCAR, and I was accepted 2 years working on earth science and kind of bringing my voice to that. I've also received a digital humanities grant, working on some issues around women and gender in DC. And then most recently, again, continuing the earth science conversation, working with Georgetown University and their environmental justice project. We're kind of looking at data points and thinking about what other questions we can ask from data science from an Africana studies perspective. For example, one of the things we kind of create in our sense of training of data scientists here at Howard is that, how do you deal with missing data, right? What is missing? As a Black woman, many times I'm missing in the data. So it doesn't help to just clean the missing, right? So how do we create a framework where I ask a question of the missing data? Who is missing? Why are they missing? And try to fill in the information of them missing before I just clean it out, right? So thinking about environmental justice and what are the questions, what are the toxins we don't ask about in environmental research data that isn't captured, or the cost, right, of just environmental inequity that we don't ask within the data. So a lot of that is just kind of grants I've received and working with, are kind of just asking questions that have not been asked, or rethinking the process in which data is managed and engineered around Black spaces, around economics, around health, around social justice, around public interest tech, right? Policy, privacy, just the questions people don't ask before they publish or think about saying things about populations that don't include us. So those are the main ones I'm kind of working on now.
Thank you for saying privacy. That's actually the space where my research lives. So I love it when people invoke privacy, cybersecurity, surveillance, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going off book. I'm throwing in extra questions because you're inspiring me here. So what do you think has led to your innovative inclinations, your willingness to push yourself to apply for things that are outside of your space? Because I think of my own trajectory, and I have a 3-year pre-doctoral fellowship at Los Alamos National Lab. I'm the only social scientist who's ever won it, and I was discouraged from applying for it. It's just like, oh, they're not looking for you. What gives you the confidence to say, I don't see me in here, but I'm going to make them see me in here? What do you think? Is it something from Temple, or where does that come from?
So it's interesting. So I'm doing a project on Lucy Dick Slow, the first Dean of Women at Howard, and reading her story, you see kind of two parallel engines that are kind of moving her. One is that women are now beginning to be seen in this space, even at Howard. So everywhere you see men, her first inkling is to think of, okay, so we're the women, right? That's one. And then two, everything that she feels humanity lacks, she feels that women have the answer to. So in looking at her work and just kind of just asking questions, like, I want to know this question, and you have money. I'm not afraid to ask. I'm not afraid. You may tell me no, and that's fine. I can ask somebody else. And, ain't no fear in saying no. But I've always allowed kindness and grace to go before me. If anyone says, Dr. A, she does a lot, but at the end of the day, they'll say she's kind. So kindness goes a long way in this field of, let's say, knowledge production, and in this new space of people being able to notice that there's so much being left out about Black women. I just ask people's questions. I just email people and ask them. I'm not in this field. I see that this field is growing and it's moving this direction. I want to ask this question from where I'm coming from. Do you mind having a conversation? And some of it has been, sure, let's talk. We have money. We have a grant here, a fellowship here that you may be interested in thinking more about this project. And before I apply for anything, I do try to, I look at the applicants and I speak to applicants who already received the award, right? And also reach out to the grant manager. And I tell them, like, I am not from earth science, but I just have some questions for earth science. Would this fit your, scope of what you want to use the funds for? And they'll send me yes or no. Or we don't have that, or maybe next year, maybe we can come back, and just asking questions. And I think that's what the core of what we do here at Howard. Like, we push students to, you see protests all the time, right? But to ask the right questions, And as faculty, we do the same thing. We ask questions of the people around us, the people amongst us, the research around us, the research among us, and we try to create new knowledge. Now, that's the goal of the field, right? As a professor, your goal is to create new knowledge that fills the gaps, disrupts something, or kind of sparks a new sense of way of thinking, right? So that's always kind of pushed me.
Scholarship is disruption. I love that.
Yeah.
So if that's not the name of your blog, it should be. You should buy that URL, Disruptive Scholarship.
I'll think about that.
So thinking about asking questions, what are the next questions that you think you're going to be asking as a scholar? So what's next for you as a scholar? You're coming off sabbatical, you're finishing this data science degree. What are the new questions and new projects that are coming down the pike?
I mean, I think the burning question that we have as a field in Africana studies, and people doubt the question, is, can we win? and I'm saying we as in African people, like, can we win? Like, is it always a losing battle? And for me in African studies, like, we've already won. I think it's just kind of getting everyone in that same playing field. Like, we won. Like, it's not, there's no competition, right? There's a sense of we exist as human beings in this world, and we exist on our own terms. So we've already won in the sense of humanity, right? We're just trying to get acknowledged in the work that we do. So that's the point. So how do we continue to
we're the origin and the culture.
Literally, right? And
yeah.
You're trying to convince everybody else that, like, it's not a competition. Like, we got, not to say, you know, we created it, so we got here first, right? Some people have kind of changed the footnote, but we got here first. We created things, again, numeracy, literacy, thinking about the fact that how we use numbers to create architecture that aligns with the suns and the stars, right? That's there. So it's kind of doing the work that solidifies that historical legacy we have within our culture across the diaspora, right? So the question is, like, how do we continue to do that work without disruption? The question I'm trying to ask. And the second question is, I recently went to a ceremony, and the orator talked about closing your eyes and imagining a world that doesn't have racism. Like, what does that look like, right? And that looks like, I don't know, you know, we're trying to kind of see what that looks like, but I can only paint my picture of that with the tools that I have. So the tools that I have are education, let's say data science now, let's say African, like, those are tools. So the tools that I have, I need to be able to paint that picture for a generation to come behind me and feel like they can also add to that picture, right? So what does that look like? And I need to create spaces that look like that, as safe as possible for our students to kind of continue, right? I teach to train my replacement, right?
Yes.
I tell my students, at some point, I don't need to do the interviews. I don't need to, like, go travel. I want you to go, because I taught you, and I know that I've done well when you can speak how, not saying exactly how I've spoken or how I've taught you, but you've been able to build on a platform to speak for yourself, right? I tell my students the most horrific thing I'm afraid of is that something happens on campus, the news media comes there, you're walking across the yard, they have a microphone, they put it to your mouth, you answer the question, and I'm looking like, what? Did you forget what we talked about in class? So, you know, that's, you know, I work to train my replacement, and I know that the students who are coming behind me are like 20 years, you know, there is a gap. So for me to be able to train them in the language that they know of, I need to speak their language, whether it's computational, whether it's social media. I need to know that language. It would train them to be able to speak for themselves, and change the world. So the question, what does the world look like without racism? And what does it look like for everyone to feel like African people across the globe, we're winning, right? No competition, but we're just winning as in we are here, we are contributing, we have our own ways of knowing that are equal to every other human being in this space. And I don't have to explain myself each and every time. So, yeah.
Incredible. I have to ask you, with your future work in mind, and this is real or imagined, is there a data set you would love to get your hands on that would help your future work? Do you want to one that you don't have access to, or one that you just wished existed? Like, what do you need to advance your work right now?
I mean, I think it's interesting. So when we use like a data set, like a collection of information in this finite or structured space, I try to create new knowledge and create new language in the program we're doing, right? So this idea of inscribing meaning to what we may already be thinking. So when we talk about, let's say, coding, let's say gender, right? Many times we say male, female, 0, 1, right? How can I dynamically recode that gives some higher sense of value? So it's not really a specific data set, but because I think it's just allowing researchers to kind of understand numeracy and numbers differently, right? So when I look at the census, and the census defines, let's say, Northern Africa as white, like, I want to change that versus passing that for myself, that I can, you know, so that's what the issue of disruption is what we're kind of going for, like, kind of having this shift in the field that rethinks how people look at coding, how people look at missing data, how people look at organizing data, wrangling, parsing, all those things that
I would add weighting, because we get weighted a lot.
Oh,
Instead of folks
that's
reaching
good.
out and finding us, they
That's
multiply
good.
us.
Yes.
I want texture and richness that includes the entirety of our experience, not one single case multiplied.
Yes, I agree. So that's what I'm going for. I'm not going for a specific data set, but I'm going for impacting the field of data where people are at least thinking twice about what they're looking at when it comes to the figures they have, and also why they're using that. You know, what is your intention? Like questioning people's intentions and finding means, deviations. You know, I think most recently in social media, the conversation around the body mass index, right? You know, how do we come to these algorithms or these charts within the health field that are disproportionately impacting African Americans in many communities, right? How do we get, so everyone should ask a question of what they're looking at, the numbers they're looking at, how they came to this data set or this algorithm or this chart or this system of organization or this resume system that kind of organizes people by last name.
And it becomes truth. We take it as just truth, that this is what is good or this is what is bad, you know, and so I'm intrigued and excited about what's to come with this, the fantastic initiatives happening at Howard, and also everything that's coming out of your research. Let's close out our time by discussing you and your background. So I'd love to know about your path through the professorate. So how did you know you wanted to live a life of the mind? When did you know what you wanted to study? And what advice might you offer to others considering this path? So I'll repeat that as you go, but I want to hear what it took to create all this incredible that I'm talking to right now.
Oh, wow. The life of the mind, interesting. So I was first generation, as far as citizen, as far as born American. My parents from Ghana, from the Bronx. I'm also first generation to go to college, get a master's, PhD, so the idea of going down a path that you don't know where it's leading, that's kind of my story. But I've had people kind of say, point that way, point this way, go that way, go this way. And kindness, again, has been my guide in going through this. But I went to Temple because my uncle went to Temple. Only person went to college, and my parents said only option because that's the only school we trust, you know. So I went there, and with there, I started sociology. In sociology, I met a professor who felt that, you know, you're very, your way of thinking and the way you are doing research at the undergrad level could possibly be expanded at the graduate level. So I ended up applying to Howard Sociology graduate program, got a full ride, and I trusted the person's direction, and I went forward. Things didn't work out. I wasn't sociologically, I guess, well trained as my faculty thought I should be. So from there, I diverted to Afro-American studies, and that has been a blessing ever since, because the idea of, in sociology, you know, there are tools and ways of thinking and theory that exist in that field, that Africana studies creates a whole different dynamic of tools and ways of thinking that I didn't have in sociology. So since being in Africana studies as a graduate student, I started over again. That's why I have 2 masters. So I have 2 masters because I like to do homework. But that's because I ended sociology, restarted Africana studies with new framework, and then continued up to the PhD level. And in that space, I was able to kind of use any tool I wanted to examine the African world. And I chose education, which I wrote a topic on with my dissertation. So from there, my PhD program from graduate Temple in African Studies, my mentor is Dr. Greg Carr, who he taught me. So if you see a t-shirt that says that Dr. Carr taught me, he taught me too. And he hired me at Howard University to be able to kind of frame this department that we focus on the discipline and tools and theories and discipline to be able to engage other disciplines around Black life. But between undergrad and, let's say, being an assistant professor, a lot of it was just trusting the fact that because I've never been through this space, I need to find people who have been and trust them to say, if you go this way, you'll be okay. If you go that way, you'll be okay. If you apply for this grant, you'll be okay. And that's what I did. I just trusted those who were in the field and felt that I had at least some potential to grow in this new phase, in this new space, and I did. So I do some literature. I do some issues on, I do work on gender. I do work on statistics and research methods and now data science. So I've always kind of been open to knowing that the path to creating knowledge or the mind work isn't always a smooth path. It may get bumpy, it also gets hilly, but
sometimes there's lightning, thunder, rain,
yes,
tornadoes.
The floor just kind of opens up and you fall in it.
You had a floor? I didn't know there were floors.
Oh yes, there are floors. There's moments when you go in the elevator and think you're going up, but you're definitely going down.
Going down, way down.
Way down. And with that, I would say one of the things I did learn is that I've never been, because of the way in which I moved to the academy, I've always allowed mentorship to be able to kind of help me kind of stay in the academy. So one thing my students know is that you can ask me any question, I'll be transparent. I'll tell you that I failed these classes. I tell you everything in that sense for another student not to go through the maze in which I kind of came to this point. But also, I've also worked with some dynamic mentors in the academy, deans, administrators, provosts who gave me feedback. I was always open to feedback, always open to, Dr. A, you're doing too much, sit down, you need to do more, you need to write more, you need to write better. You need to write in this way for this thing to happen, to allow this new thing to open up. So I've always been open to feedback. That has been very helpful. And I've always documented everything I've ever done. So on my computer, it's a desktop computer. It has like, from graduate school, I have a folder from that year and everything I've done, I put in that folder. The next year, I have a syllabus folder from every course I ever taught, every evaluation students have filled out, because I always want to be better. I tell my students that when I've taken time off from the classroom, but when I come back, I'm gonna be different. Like, I'm just gonna be different. Like, I just can't be the same person because I've taken time off. And the work, the energy, the way in which I speak, my lectures, it's going to be different because I've taken time to kind of pour into myself, which I haven't done since kindergarten. I went from kindergarten to PhD. I didn't take no time off, right? And now I've taken time off. So I've been gone for a while, but I'll be back soon. Not this fall. If you're a Howard student, don't take my class. I'm not teaching this fall. I'll be back soon.
If you're taking my class, it's not me.
It's definitely not me. So I'll apologize in advance right now. Well, when I get back to the classroom, like, I'm really thinking about, like, I want to teach class in the metaverse. I want to teach class like in dynamic ways that students feel like this is what I paid for. I wanted to experience the world differently, or I wanted to imagine a different world when it comes to, just say, tech or numeracy and literacy and reading and gender studies and how we look at Black women, their potential. Because in the field of data science, we know that, Ida B. Wells used data science to deal with injustice, right? Du Bois used data science and visualization to kind of present Black people in Black spaces. So these tools that people are using today that are in Python, we've been using it before. It was pen and paper, but we've done it. So we can do it. It's just kind of getting us together in the same room and knocking everybody else out that doubts us to get the work done. But yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It may change tomorrow. Who knows? I don't know, but that's my story.
You're innovative, so it's it's a gift to talk to you. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with? Are there any questions you wish I'd asked you, or things that you'd like to share that you haven't yet?
I mean, I think for a graduate student, going through a program, I would know your space. I would say that. That's one thing. I always study the space around me. I've never walked into a space and not know who's in the room, who they're connected to, what potential they have to help me grow. I've always studied everyone in the room. I've never applied to a program that I didn't know who was the director. So I've always been as a graduate student. And as now a 10-year professor doing my assistantship, same thing. Like, I knew the provost and the president. I knew every person who had an internal grant opportunity at Howard. So I applied for every internal, also applied for external ones. So I've always been someone who honors the space that I'm in. And that's something that I teach my students. Like, you need to know where you are to be able to know where you're going. or to be able to make a change in the space you want to make. So I encourage everyone to kind of do that, like survey your environment if you haven't done so. And if you can, don't go to a new space without kind of checking it out, like asking questions of the space, because you don't want to go somewhere and not get out. You don't want to get trapped, because there's some traps out there in the world. You don't want to be trapped somewhere.
Thank you so much.
I love teaching. I love teaching. I love what I do. So don't be fearful of it being torturous. It's a love-hate relationship. But you
haven't had any of those academic teaching nightmares?
What? Okay, so I said I was going to say this. When I was going to apply for the PhD program, I had asked a professor who I thought I was like cool with. I said, you know what, professor, I'm thinking of like applying for the PhD program. And this white male said, you want to be like me? And I was like, not quite, but this idea of like this, the academy is a shared, the unshared white male space, right? So you get, I've been checked plenty of times. But at the end of the day, I'm still gonna keep pushing. I'm gonna swerve you and like go to the next person. Yeah, like, I'm built for this. So yes, there's the swerving and disappointment, and as a Black woman, as a Black person, yeah, it's there. But despite that, it's their honor to have me in their space. Like the things that we bring to the table, it's just, they don't have it. So you not to be prideful, right? Not to be boastful, but the idea that I believe the questions that I ask are different from someone else. And I put so much effort and work in trying to ask different questions that I believe I need to be in the room. So if you don't let me in, I have to find another room to enter in. That's all. But, oh yeah, it's not, please. I got battle scars all down the back, but we're not gonna talk about that today. This is a happy day. We want everyone to kind of enjoy the space they're in and feel empowered. But that's a whole nother interview on battle scars, whole nother interview.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Quarkume. I know our students are ecstatic that they will get to share space with you this summer, at the very least with your inspiring statements when you come visit us. Thank you. This was incredible.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a blessing.
Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.